on this radio station. Its programs and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to David Make the Shine Side Out. That's right. Show number 643, 340, 600. We're going to talk about megalithic builders. Donate if you can, or tell people about the station. Just as good. But if you can donate, good for you and good for us. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We just concluded, as you know, the great financial cycle, fiat currency, parasites, the parasitic system, really, and a whole bunch of other stuff. That was a bit of a heavy set undertaking. Maybe a little dry in areas, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but ultimately of crucial importance. So we thought maybe something a little lighter. This is a much expanded version of the show we did 300 shows ago. 300 shows ago. Good
grief.
Holy moly, what's that, 6 years? That's about right, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so about 6 years ago, we talked about megalithic builders, and it sort of became topical because we found a lot more megalithic sites around the world, especially in China, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But elsewhere as well. And it, in my mind, at least, it sort of solidified our understanding a bit more because they seem to have used very similar building techniques. We're going to talk about that fairly early on in the show cycle. We talk about stone technology. There's some really interesting stuff. Holy moly, almost 5 years ago. You gotta be, good lord. And that's a while. You know, it's really interesting to look at some of this, especially in the Egyptian context as well, but not only. And then we're going to visit some really interesting sites. We're going to visit the Becker Valley, Baalbek. You know, the typical Baalbek we're going to visit. That's very, very interesting. And all the stuff that's happened there. And it's, again, it defies explanation completely. And then we're going to visit the Yanmen Shen mountain. And they actually have the biggest cut rocks in the world. The biggest cut rocks in the world. They were never moved, but we'll go into that in some detail when we discuss it as well. And then, well, of course, we'll go to the place that broke history. Göbekli Tepe. And the other
Tepe, yes.
The other tepes that that exists around the world. And then we're going to jump around the world just to see how many megalithic sites there actually are. And there's many. There's a great deal. And then there's a really interesting link that's sort of towards the end of the show cycle, connecting Australia with Göbekli Tepe. It's a very interesting article. So can't really wait for this. But in there we'll have the megalithic. We'll talk about the megalithic civilization hypothesis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about that. The megalithic yard. You might be familiar with that potentially, maybe, and a few other interesting things. So there's, in fact, Robin Heath wrote a very interesting book called Sun, Moon, and Stonehenge. And then so on and so forth. So, look, this is a very, very long show cycle. It's about 100 pages. Now, a lot of those are pictures. Well, not a lot of those, but there are a lot of pictures in here. We'll try to put them into the show as we go along.
Yeah, I'll do that. Mm-hmm.
We'll do, Dave's really good at that. This is the kind of show, and I'm thinking of turning this into a proper video maybe at some point, that really has more impact when you see it. Now, we can talk about it all day long, you know, megalithic sites and those amazing looking stone walls and structures, unless you see it, mm-hmm. especially in comparison to I guess, human being, for example, size-wise, or if you look at the intricate cuts and angles and just how closely stones are fitted, how smooth they are, how well they are worked, and then you also see the difference in layers. So a really good example is again Baalbek, where you have these massive, and I'm talking about, these are the biggest stones that have ever been lifted in the ancient world. In fact, to this day, to be used in the construction of anything. So you have that initial, the foundational wall, and on top of that, very clearly, you have the Roman stones that were laid on top of the foundation, and then on top of that, you have a much younger fortification, I guess by local Middle Eastern folks after the fall of the Roman Empire. So there's three very clear constructional stages that you can see in Baalbek at the wall. I mean, it is completely obvious that that's what you're looking at, because they're very, very different, and also the weathering on those stones is quite different. And we're also going to compare it to, I don't know if you're familiar with the Thunderstone. The Thunderstone is the largest stone that was actually moved by humans in historic times. That was in Russia. Now, bearing in mind, though, and sort of jumping ahead a little, that it was dragged around. The Thunderstone was just dragged around. It was never lifted. The Baalbek stones and other stones were lifted, because this is the funny thing with Baalbek. The largest stones are not at the bottom of the construction.
No.
They're in the middle of the construction. They are what we would call 2 stories up these days.
That's right.
Yeah? So, and again, this is, I don't know if you ever saw these ancient movies. There's this movie, the Thief of Baghdad. Not the 1940s version. I'm talking about the 1920s version, which was silent, black and white and silent. And they had these massive megalithic sets. And if I look at the Baalbek temple here with a person standing or sitting on the stone or whatever,
I've got
right
that
next
one
to it.
shown. Mm-hmm.
Right, perfect. That is, to me, it is such a almost like a movie set. It should be in MGM, a Technicolor, wide shot, and that's how you should enjoy the Baalbek temple, because it is such a cyclopean construction. It almost defies understanding. I mean, you look at it and you go, oh my goodness. And we'll also talk about why the Romans were very unlikely to have been able to move stones like that. Well, we'll get to it though. But before we do all of that,
what are we going to do first?
Why don't you take us, Dave, through the official view on megalithic builders?
Absolutely. Okay, so a megalith is a large stone that has been used to construct a structure or monument, either alone or together with other stones. The word megalithic describes structures made of large stones without the use of mortar or concrete, representing periods of prehistory. I love that, prehistory. What to me is really funny about the word prehistory is it's still history. It's before history. But hang on, isn't that still history?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Yes.
No, kind of. Well, we don't know who built it, but there it is. Characterized by such constructions. For later periods, the word monolith with an overlapping meaning is more likely to be used. The word megalith comes from the ancient Greek. Transliteration is megas, meaning great, and whatever that is, lithos, meaning stone. Megalith also denotes one or more rocks hewn in definite shapes for special purposes. It has been used to describe buildings built by people from many parts of the world living in many different periods. The term was first used in reference to Stonehenge by Algernon Herbert in 1849. A variety of large stones are seen as megaliths, with the most widely known megaliths not being tombs. The construction of these structures took place mainly in the Neolithic period, though earlier Mesolithic examples are known, and continued into the Chalcolithic period and the Bronze Age. Mickey, why don't you talk about the periods?
Certainly, and this is the official, everyone. This is the official timeline of these megalithic constructions. Okay, and taken straight from Wikipedia. So I'll take the Mesolithic, which is the Middle Stone Age, right? About 9,500 BC, which is about 11,500 years ago, which is about the end of the Younger Dryas. It's the construction in Asia Minor of Göbekli Tepe from Proto-Hettian, or else a yet-to-be-discovered culture, and in brackets here, the oldest religious structure in the world, because, of course, that's what it has to be according to archaeology. It's got to be religious! It was submerged, now, actually, deliberately buried around 7,400 BC, right? There was a 12-meter-long monolith, probably weighing around 15,000 kilograms, that's 15 tons, and it was found under 40 meters of water in the Strait of Sicily, southwest of Sicily, and the function of that particular monolith is unknown. Now, is it not possible that it was not submerged when it was built and then the water rose?
Oh, they had to hold their breath a lot back in those days. Mm-hmm.
Now, the next one here is the 7th or the 8th millennium BC. Again, the same kind of time frame. And it's a problematic date, and it was optically stimulated luminescence. That's one of the dating mechanisms for stone. Optically stimulated luminescence. We've discussed, well, we can discuss it again if you guys like. Of Quinta de Queimada menhir in Western Algarve in Portugal. A very early period of megalithic activity in the Algarve, older than the rest of Europe, and in parallel to some extent with the famous Anatolian site of Göbekli Tepe. Okay, so you've got this Quinta de Queimada menhir, right? Older than the rest of Europe, but in parallel with Göbekli Tepe. So is this potentially a clue that this culture, or a culture, existed that spanned all the way from Turkey to, in fact, Portugal, which is about 3,000 kilometers, in case you don't know. That's about probably 1,700, it's 1,700 miles. So you can't walk it in a day. That's my point. Right? So there's that. But why don't you tell us about the Neolithic, the New Stone Age?
The New Stone Age. I love it. Well, we're going to have one soon too, again, so there'll be the third. So this is 7,000 BC, construction of the Proto-Canaanite Israel Atlit Yam. 6,000 BC, construction in Portugal, the Almendres Comlec Evora. 5,000 BC, emergence of the Atlantic Neolithic period, the age of agriculture along the western shores of Europe during the 6th millennium BC, pottery culture of the La Almagra, Spain nearby, perhaps precedent from Africa. 4,850 BC, constructions in Malta, that's Scorba temples. 4,800, so 50 years difference, constructions in Brittany, that's Barnes and Piotu Bougon. 4,500 BC, constructions in South Egypt, that's the Nabta Playa. 4,300 BC, constructions in South Spain, Dolmen de Albertarite, Cadiz. What else we got? We got 4,000 BC, constructions in Brittany, that's the Karnak. In Karnak, Portugal, Great Dolmen of Zambergero, Evora in France, central and southern, Corsica, Spain, Galicia, England and Wales, constructions in Andalusia, Spain, the Villa Martin Cadiz, construction in Proto-Canaanite Israel, 4,000 to 3,000 BC constructions in the rest of the Proto-Canaanite Levant, e.g. Rogenrel, and Dolmens. Do you like my accent, Mickey? I did pretty good then.
Nice.
3,700 BC constructions in Ireland. I do it with an accent. Ireland. That's Ireland for everybody else. Cock, Ivarg, and elsewhere. 3,600 BC constructions in England. Mambury or Mulberry Rings and God Manchester. And Malta and Madra temples. 3,500 BC constructions in Spain. It looks, Mickey, with all of these age differences between each one of them, I'm just going to make a quick comment, and that is maybe the stonemasons were just walking around like, can we come build you something?
Yeah, I know, right? That's a bit like that.
Yeah, we'll build you something. Yeah, it's all good. Just pay us in what would it have been? It would have been olive oil and not flour. It would have been something else. Whatever it was, that let's just pay them in that, right? Wine and olive oil. Where am I? 3,500 constructions in Spain. Yep. France, Malta, Belgium, and Germany. 3,400 constructions in Sardinia. That's the circle graves. In Ireland, New Grange, Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, and Denmark. 3,300 constructions in France, the Karnak stones. 3,200 constructions in Malta, that's Hagar, Quim, and Tarxian. 3,100 constructions in Russia, dolmens of North Caucasus. 3,000 BC constructions in Sardinia, that's the earliest construction phase of the prehistoric altar of Monte de Acodi. France, the Samura, Dordogne, Languedoc and Biscay, and the Mediterranean coast in Spain, Los Millares, Sicily, Belgium, that's the Ardennes, and Orkney, as well as the first henges, the circular earthworks in Britain.
Nicely done, my friend. Now, before we go on here, and there's a couple more here. What you can see here, we're covering a fairly large geography, all the way from the Middle East, into Europe, into Northern Eastern Europe, into Western Europe, into Southern Europe. So this whatever this is, okay, whoever built this, built it all over Europe. They constructed in these, I guess, very large stone structures, very similar in appearance, all over Europe, over a period of about 6,000 years. Okay? 6,000 years. Very similar. Very large. Very similar, very large. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why? Not how, because they did it somehow. It was done. But the question is why? It's hard work. It's just hard. Why? Now, did they want it to last? Did they want it to mark something? Transmit some information? I don't know. But this is just megalithic construction as it refers to, I guess, our understanding of the world, which is from the Middle East to Europe. At the same time, and earlier even, there are megalithic structures elsewhere in the world. And I said earlier, because some of them are now underwater, right? So they probably predate Göbekli Tepe, or at the very least are contemporary with those. But these massive stone structures we find all over the planet. Okay, it is really, really hard to date stone, and most of these dates come by organic material that was found in such a way that it would allow for dating. Like,
and that's
if they
called
found
relative dating.
Correct. Well, no, that's absolute dating. If it is organic. Relative dating is if it goes into the different layers of the earth, right? If you start digging,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, correct. Now, so that there are difficulties with both because you don't know if the organic material is contemporary with the stone or not, right? And if you can date a stone, you still don't know when it was put there. Like the stone could be, I don't know, 5 million years old for argument's sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know when it was put there. So it's really tough to date it. So it's
And you can't tell when it was carved.
not really,
No.
not really.
Only with the patina
Correct.
comparison. Yeah.
And that of course is would assume that conditions are what they were today for a long
Exactly.
period of time.
Mhm.
So and that's another problem with dating. So I will say here at this point that I think that a lot of these structures are a lot older,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, than what is put forward here, because if you put anything beyond 3000 BC, even 2000 BC,
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's 4000 years ago.
That's right.
We have no idea, Dave.
I know.
We don't know. I mean, we go, what? I mean, the thing is, we scratch our head and go, yeah, okay. How long had human beings been around at that point? 300,000 years?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay. Well, these things could be a lot older. Okay, but that's enough belaboring that particular point, flogging that horse. Now we're coming to the Chalcolithic, and it's about 2,500 BC. Constructions in Brittany and Limerick, Carmario and elsewhere in Italy, Otranto, Sardinia and Scotland northeast, plus the climax of the megalithic bell beaker culture in Iberia. This is actually, I can't get into it now. That's actually a really interesting culture, the bell beakers. In Germany and the British Isles, stone circle at Stonehenge. So Stonehenge was constructed 7,000 years, at least accepted today,
Mhm.
7,000 years after Göbekli Tepe.
That's right.
And Göbekli Tepe is a lot more sophisticated than Stonehenge
That's
in
right.
its workmanship, at least. Okay, anyway, not taken away from Stonehenge. Love Stonehenge. With the bell beakers, the Neolithic period gave way to the Chalcolithic, the age of copper. About 2,400 BC, the bell beaker culture was dominant in Britain, and hundreds of smaller stone circles were built in the British Isles at this time. Now, before we go on, it's also worthy to note that we found massive circular structures in Africa. And when I say we, I'm talking about Michael Tellinger.
Mm-hmm. They're the ringstones.
The ring stones, right? So, again, I don't know the dates on those. I don't know if anyone has dated them or not. I don't know, but we'll endeavor to find out for this show cycle. And which brings us to, and I'll take this one because you really took a long chunk, and I don't want to weigh out, brother. And you can take the stone technology because I think you'll love that one. The Bronze Age. 2000 BC constructions in Brittany, Ga, Italy, Bari, Sicily, Cava dei Servi, and Cava Lazzaro, in Scotland, Callanish. The Chalcolithic period gave way to the Bronze Age in Western and Northern Europe. So copper obviously led to bronze. About 1800 BC, constructions in Italy. Giovinazzo in Sardinia started the Nuragic civilization. 1500 BC, constructions in Portugal. Alta Pedroso and Morella. 1400 BC, burial of Egtvet girl in Denmark, whose body is today one of the best preserved examples of its kind. 1200 BC, last vestiges of the megalithic tradition in the Mediterranean and elsewhere come to an end during the general population upheaval known to ancient history as the invasions of the Sea Peoples. And exactly what is that, guys? What is the invasion of the Sea Peoples? Good question. Good question. And they just appeared, by the way, about 1200 BC. They just appeared, attacked Egypt and the Eastern Mediterranean, but we don't know terribly much about them. What? True story. It just well, there they are. The Sea People are attacking us. Were they Vikings? I don't know. Probably not. Dave, why'd you tell us about the stone technology?
So, in stone technology, we're talking about lathe-turned stone housewares. So this is, cups and jugs and all sorts of things, yeah? Bowls. In the Cairo Museum and in other museums around the world, there are examples of stoneware that were found in and around the step pyramid at Saqqara. Petrie also found pieces of similar stoneware in Giza. There are several special things about these bowls, vases, and plates. They show the unmistakable tool marks of a lathe manufactured item. Recently, there's a great example of it where they use laser scanning to scan the object and then determine the accuracy of the object using computers. And it's remarkable. Within a single thou, from top to bottom, left to right, it's amazing. They show the unmistakable tool marks of lathe manufactured item. This can easily be seen in the center of the open bowls or plates where the angle of the cut changes rapidly, leaving a clean, narrow and perfectly circular line made by the tip of the cutting tool. If you're a woodworker or a metalworker, you know what that means. These bowls and stone dishes or platters are some of the finest ever found, and they are from the earliest period of ancient Egyptian civilization. They are made from a variety of materials, from such as alabaster, all the way up the hardness scale to the very hard, such as granite. Working with soft stones such as alabaster is relatively simple compared to granite. Alabaster can be worked with primitive tools and abrasives. The elegant workings in granite are a different matter and indicate not only a consummate level of skill, but a different and perhaps more advanced technology. Here's a quote from Petrie. The lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in modern workshops. That's a big call. Stoneware such as this has not been found from any later era in Egyptian history. It seems that the skills necessary were lost. Maybe the technology was lost, not the skills. Maybe the people still had the skills, but no tech. Some delicate vases are made of very brittle stone, such as schist. It's kind of like flint. And yet are finished, turned and polished to a flawless paper-thin edge. An extraordinary feat of craftsmanship. At least one piece is so flawlessly turned that the entire bowl, about 9 inches in diameter, fully hollowed out, including an undercut of the 3-inch opening at the top, balances perfectly. The top rests horizontally when the bowl is placed on a glass shelf. I mean, perfectly flat is the example. On a round tipped bottom, no bigger than the size and shape of the tip of a hen's egg. This requires that the entire bowl have a symmetrical wall thickness without any substantial error. With a base area so tiny, less than 0.15 inch square, any any asymmetry in a material as dense as granite would produce a lean in the balance of the finished piece. This kind of skill will raise the eyebrows of any machinist. To produce such a piece in clay would be very impressive. In granite, it's incredible. Other pieces turned out of granite, porphyry or basalt, are completely hollowed with narrow undercut flared openings, and some even have long necks. Since we have yet to reproduce such pieces, it is safe to say that the techniques or machinery they employed to produce these bowls has yet to be replicated.
Pause for a second. I want everybody to fully understand what you've just said. We can't do this today.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot do this today. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I echo those. We can't do this today. There is a large 24-inch or more diameter piece turned out of schist, shown here glued back together in the Cairo Museum. It is a large plate with a central hub about 2 to 3 inches diameter, with an outside rim that in 3 areas spaced evenly around the perimeter is flared towards the central hub. It is a truly amazing feat of stonework. I can't believe it's stone. Isn't it extraordinary? There were not just a few of these. Apparently there were thousands found in and around the Step Pyramid. The Step Pyramid is believed to be the oldest stone pyramid in Egypt, the first one built. It seems to be the only place where these kind of stone housewares were found in quantity, although Petrie found some fragments of similar bowls in Giza. Many of them have inscribed or scratched onto them the symbols of the earliest kings of Egypt, the pre-dynastic era of monarchs, from before the pharaohs, mind you. Judging by the primitive skill of the inscriptions, it seems unlikely that those signatures were made by the same craftsmen who fashioned the bowls in the first place. Perhaps they were added later by those who had somehow acquired them and probably found them in the dirt. So, who made these objects, and how, and where, and when, and what became of them? That their housewares were buried in the oldest of Egyptian pyramids.
So, just a couple of things here, right? First, I neglected to point out who Petrie is. So, Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie, I'll send you the updated show notes. Dave, born 1853, died 1942, commonly known simply as Sir Flinders Petrie, was a British Egyptologist and a pioneer of systematic methodology in archaeology and the preservation of artifacts. He held the first chair of Egyptology in the United Kingdom, and excavated many of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt, in conjunction with his wife Hilda Erlin. Petrie developed the system of dating layers based on pottery and ceramic findings. Petrie has been denounced for his pro-eugenics views. Well, he was a product of his time, and he was a dedicated believer in the superiority of the northern peoples over the Latinate and southern peoples. So he was a racist, okay, very much. But again, that's pretty much the time he was in. He has also been referred to as the father of Egyptian archaeology. So his findings or his observations go back a good 150 years or so, maybe thereabouts 140, 120 years. And all the things he says are to be taken fairly seriously, I think. We're looking at the standing of his academic achievement. Second point I wanted to make is, again, we have no idea how old these stone implements are. None. That they were found in one place, to me, would mean they were maybe stored away. And not for safekeeping, or maybe they were just a warehouse. It's funny. We are still using things, artifacts, that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old to this day. You can buy them, you can use them. I mean, I've got a carpet that is a few hundred years old, apparently. It's an heirloom object. My grandfather's watch, which is now probably 120 years old.
It tells time in Latin.
Tells time in Latin, not quite. But if you look at the royalty and even the Vatican or religious institutions, they hold artifacts that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, is it not possible that maybe there was a storehouse, or maybe even an underground warehouse or some such, that held large quantities of consumer goods for the time, made out of stone? Because if you can work in stone, and this is really the whole point here, when we talk about the Stone Age, in our mind are the Flintstones, right? Running around, in furs, living in caves, and then not very sophisticated at all. Maybe some chipped tools, right? Not really. And I think what Dave has described here, the sophistication of the stonework that is apparent, right, in the artifacts, to the point where we can't do this today. We can't do this today.
Mm-hmm.
It stands to reason that maybe these are very, very, very old indeed. And if something sits in a warehouse, it could sit there. I mean, we found the mechanism of Antikythera after almost 2,000 years, Dave.
Yeah.
Sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
2,000 years. So if you've got stone implements, right?
Yep.
And they're sitting somewhere, they can sit there for tens of thousands of years as far as you're concerned. They're not going to rust. Okay? And especially if they're made with such craftsmanship, such beauty. And of course, if you find them, you'll use them. Of course, and then you scratch them. You scratch your name into them or whatever, just another mine. See? So we don't know how old they're. I think they could be very, 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 very old indeed. That's the point here. But even more astounding are the drilling techniques that we find.
Yeah.
Tube drilling, specifically. These tubular drills vary in thickness from 1/4 inch to 5 inches in diameter, and from 1/30th to 1/5 of an inch thick. The smallest hole yet found in granite is 2 inches in diameter. There is still a larger example where a platform of limestone rock has been dressed down by cutting it away with tube drills about 18 inches diameter. The circular grooves occasionally intersecting prove that it was done merely to remove the rock. And again, this is Flinders Petrie in 1883. In 1996, this tube-drilled piece of granite was on display in the Cairo Museum without any associated identifying information. The photo, and this is part of the photosphere here, I think, maybe not. I'll find it. Clearly shows spiral grooves on the visible portion. The grooves can be seen to be of regular depth and spacing, and occur in all of the holes in this piece. As the holes overlap, were these grooves caused by abrasive slurry, they would not be expected to be so consistent. These grooves seem to support Petrie's conclusion of jeweled points set into bronze tube drills. The ancient builders used a tube drill to hollow out the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. They drilled, of course, and left a tube drill mark on the top side of the box on the east side. They did some extra polishing to fix it up a bit, but if you go to the king's chamber, you can still see it if you look carefully. Looking at the radius of the cut in the sarcophagus, less than 2 inches, it is obvious that in this one piece alone, the masons made thousands of holes, each several inches deep. The craftsmen who did this had mastery of the principles of drilling around hollow holes in any material, soft or hard, wood, stone, or metal, and could have drilled virtually any naturally occurring material on this planet.
That's the truth, Becky. That's the truth right there. How about let's go to the Valley Temple near the Sphinx. Most of the doorways in this temple still show evidence of tube drilling. It seems that the holes were used to hold in place long vertical rotating shafts on which the doors were hung like hinges. A primitive version of tube drilling can even be done with a bamboo drill bit, a bow saw, and sand. However, making a bit tough enough to drill holes in granite is not simple, easy, or primitive. Drilling with a tube is a specialized method that won't develop without the need for a large hole. These holes indicate a technology that are not developed just for this purpose, but for many earlier and easier purposes. Generations of development over many projects over hundreds of years I'm going to say possibly. They imply mining and metallurgy, bit manufacturing, generations of experience with grinding materials, rotational manufacturing techniques, the wheel, and all that goes with it. What was the motivation for this development, and is there a corresponding archaeological record in pre-dynastic or Old Kingdom Egypt? Meki, I've got a picture that I'm just putting on the screen right now, and it is what shows tube drilling, and there is a score around the edge of the hole which suggests, like a record on a record player, that a continuous cut was being made, with an advancement of the drill bit into the material of something like a 1/4 inch per rotation. Now, that kind, and even in granite, that's what they're looking at. The thing that I was showing wasn't granite, but that's an example. So a hole saw that we might use today to get through tabletops and things like that, that's an example of tube drilling, but the tube is short. So experts were looking, Meki, at the tube drilling in many different circumstances, and some of them were, 2 meters through a whole rock, dead straight. And this scoring on the inside told them that whatever they were doing, they were going through it like it was butter. They weren't rotating the bit or the tube in place using a scoring material like sand or something. Because it was burning through the material so quick that the proof itself was there, evident in that long scoring mark down the inside of the hole, like rifling on a rifle barrel.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I'm using these descriptions so that you can work it out in your brain. It'll make sense when you listen to this. And the experts were saying there's no way that this could have been done using a medium like sand or something, and copper or bronze tools, because the tool and the sand would not wear away the material as fast, as you could see evident there. So yeah, something else, that there's even large, which I'm sure we'll get to, but rotational saw bits evident in the curvature of something that's like two meters across, a saw blade that was doing a certain cut on a certain stone in Egypt. Anyway, what else do we have, Becky?
Mechanical methods. These are Petrie's comments. And the following extracts are taken from Chapter 8, entitled Mechanical Methods, in Petrie's classic reference work, The Pyramids and Temples of Giza. They concern some of his findings at Giza during the winters of 1880 and 1881. Now, bearing in mind, he was one of the first Westerners to examine any of these things, right? So archaeology, as such as it was, sort of started with him in Egypt, right? And before that, it was really only grave robbers that were interested in Egyptian artifacts. And this is a quote. The methods employed by the Egyptians in cutting the hard stones, which they so frequently worked, have long remained undetermined. Various suggestions have been made, some very impractical, but no actual proofs of the tools employed or the manner of using them have been obtained. The typical method of working hard stones, such as granite, diorite, or basalt, etc., was by means of bronze tools. These were set with cutting points, far harder than the quartz which was operated on. The material of these cutting points is yet undetermined, but only 5 substances are possible: beryl, topaz, chrysoberyl, corundum, or sapphire, and diamond. The character of the work would certainly seem to point to diamond as being the cutting jewel, and only the considerations of its rarity in general interfere with this conclusion. Again, he goes on to say, many nations are in the habit of cutting hard materials by means of a soft substance, copper, wood, horn, etc., with a hard powder applied to it. The powder sticks and the base is employed, and this being scraped over the stone to be cut, so wears it away. Many persons have therefore very readily assumed, as I myself did at first, that this method must necessarily have been used by the Egyptians, and that it would suffice to produce all the examples now collected. Such, however, is far from being the case, though no doubt in alabaster and other soft stones this method was employed. That the Egyptians were acquainted with a cutting jewel far harder than quartz, and that they used this jewel as a sharp pointed graver, is beyond doubt by the diorite bowls with inscriptions of the 4th dynasty, of which I found fragments at Giza, as well as the scratches on polished granite of Ptolemaic age at San. The hieroglyphs are incised with a very free cutting point. They are not scraped or ground out, but are plowed through the diorite with rough edges to the line. As the lines are only 1/150th inch wide, the figures being about 0.2 long, it is evidence that the cutting point must have been much harder than quartz, and tough enough not to splinter when so fine an edge was being employed. Probably only 1/200th inch wide. Parallel lines are graved only 1/30th inch apart from center to center. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on. We therefore need have no hesitation in allowing that the graving out of lines and hard stones by jewel points was a well-known art. And when we find on the surfaces of the saw cuts in diorite grooves as deep as 1/100th inch, it appears far more likely that such were produced by fixed jewel points in the saw than by any fortuitous rubbing out, or rather about, of a loose powder. And when further it is seen that these deep grooves are almost always regular and uniform in depth, and equidistant, their production by the successive cuts of the jewel teeth of a saw appears to be beyond question. That the blades of the saw were of bronze, we know from the green staining on the sides of the saw cuts and on grains of sand left in a saw cut. The forms of the tools were straight saws, circular saws, tubular saws, and lathes. The straight saws varied from 0.3 to 0.2 inch thick, according to the work. The largest were 8 feet or more in length. Number 6, a slice of diorite bearing equidistant and regular grooves of circular arcs parallel to one another. These grooves have been nearly polished out by cross-grinding, but are still visible. The only feasible explanation of this piece is that it was produced by a circular saw. These tubular drills vary in thickness from 1/4 inch to 5 inches in diameter, and from 1/30th to 1/5 of an inch thick. The smallest hole yet found in granite is 2 inches in diameter. At El Berche, there is still a larger example where a platform of limestone has been dressed down by cutting it away with tube drills about 18 inches diameter and the circular grooves occasionally intersecting, proof that it was done merely to remove the rock. Dave?
The lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in the modern workshops. The diorite bowls and vases of the old kingdom are frequently met with and show great technical skill. One piece found in Giza, number 14, shows that the method employed was true turning and not any process of grinding, since the bowl has been knocked off of its centering, recentered imperfectly, and the old turning not quite turned out. Thus there are 2 surfaces belonging to different centerings and meeting in a cusp. Such an appearance could not be produced by any grinding or rubbing processes which pressed on the surface. Another detail is shown by fragment number 15. Here, the curves of the bowl are spherical and must have therefore been cut by a tool sweeping an arc from a fixed center while the bowl rotated. This center or hinging of the tool was in the axis of the lathe for the general surface of the bowl, right up to the edge of it. But as a lip was wanted, the centering of the tool was shifted, but with exactly the same radius of its arc, and a fresh cut made to leave a lip to the bowl. That this was certainly not a chance result of handwork is shown, not only by the exact circularity of the curves and their equality, but also by the cusp left where they met, or where they meet. This has not been at all rounded off, and would certainly have been the case in handwork, as it is clear the proof of the rigidly mechanical method of striking the curves.
Crazy.
Yes,
I think it's
indeed.
No, I mean the thing is, it's like I said, we associate the Stone Age or stone generally with kind of primitive level of development, and nothing could be further from the truth. To work in stone with this degree of technical skill, which might even elude us today, is something that I think we just gloss over. And Petrie wrote about this over 100 years ago, right? So it's not like we haven't known about this. Now, prehistoric construction techniques are something else that we are going to discuss here. And again, the pictures will speak 1,000 words, but the intricacy with which stones were fitted together, the technology that was used, such as gold clamps or other metal clamps, the way that stones fitted together, and almost in like a smooth, polished, homogeneous fashion, no matter how big they were, with really odd protrusions that you find all over the world as well, as though there might have been anchor points of some sort. We just don't know, right? And again, the pictures say 1,000 words. But the earliest examples of stone masonry in both the Old and New worlds demonstrates a high skill level, something which is often suggested as being the result of existing knowledge of carpentry at the transition in working from wood to stone. This idea is born out somewhat in Egypt, where, for example, the masonry of the ceilings in the temples of the first dynasty Saqqara were carved to imitate the reed bundle ceilings of pre-dynastic Egypt. There is, however, no evidence of such a transition in the Americas, and there are a number of masonry techniques we're going to talk about: folded stone corners, multifaceted stones, metal block ties, quarry marks such as splitting stone, moving large stones, extreme masonry, we'll talk about that, vitrified stone, maneuvering protuberances, mortise and tenon joints, concrete in ancient structures, drilling in prehistory, and the specific selection of stone. The transport and use of unnecessarily large blocks of stone, the specific selectivity of stone type, along with various examples of extreme masonry at numerous sacred and ancient monuments, is starting to reveal a reverence for stone itself. And ancient monuments is starting to reveal, an idea which has foundation in mythology, religion, and can still be seen today at Jerusalem, Mecca, the lignum of India, and the crowning of any new king or queen in the UK. Scottish stone of Scone, for example, or English kingstone. It is noticeable that there are several specific construction techniques in the masonry of apparently unrelated cultures from around the ancient world. The specific similarity in design technique and engineering skill is in certain cases very suggestive of a common source of knowledge, or at the very least of contact between cultures. In response, it has been argued that such similarities are co-evolutionary, being the natural result of working with stone. I would argue against that, but that's just me. Now, having said that, Dave, why don't you...
we've only got 1 minute
Oh, we do.
left.
Oh, look, in that case, very quickly, it's really important to understand that it wasn't just they're using stones, but they're using very specific stones. And if the stone they wanted wasn't available where they wanted to build, they would transport it over very long distances. Why that is the case, we just don't know.
Or in the case of what is it, Pumapunku?
Yeah.
They had to go down from a mountaintop down to the
Yes.
valley and then back up the most ridiculously steep slope with unreasonably sized stone. And that has to be acknowledged. It's
100%, my friend.
if you slipped down the stairs, you would go all the way to the valley floor. And how those stairs could at all facilitate moving a rock that was, it's ridiculously large and heavy. Just forget it. I can't imagine how it was done.
Good.
Oh, there's the music, Mackie. This is the end of the taping. Mackie's shiny slide out for today. We're going to catch you for breakfast 7 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday, American Eastern Standard Time. Plus, we'll be back again next week for another Dave Mackie's shiny slide out at the normal time. Though I may not be home for that, but I'll let you know. In the meantime, everybody, be safe.